Okay. And so for our last video today, I just want to touch on um, adult experience versus child experience and why I feel that it's often discredited. And that's going to go along really well with the reading. And I do just want to not give you a heads up, but just be like really honest. After I read this and went through these lectures, I had some difficult conversations. I'm already getting emotional about it, so I apologize. I'm gonna try not to make it about my problems in my life and all these things, but I have had a lot of experience in my life where decisions were made for me, and they've really affected me as an adult. And our reading talked a lot about children having this dependency on their parents and how we teach them that at a really young age, whether it's material dependency or fiscal, physiological. Um, and I also think, though, that something that doesn't really get talked a lot about is like an emotional and mental dependency. And we teach them that we as adults know what's best for them, and that the decisions that we make as parents um, are the right decision, and that it's the parents' right to make that decision on their behalf. And I think that there is a lot of accountability that needs to be had. I know in my life, I need to hold people accountable, and I feel that this lecture, and I know that it was more about children's rights in terms of like in our society being able to give rights to them, but I also feel that it's not just an outward thing, that it's also an inward thing as well. And I think that there's a lot of devaluation that happens for kids. I know that I've experienced that myself, and I've felt very inferior and devalued in my own family and in my own life. So I just want to talk really quick about this lack of experience and knowledge, and how it's very minimized, and I would even say like kind of demonized a little bit in our society. And when this idea of children lacking knowledge and experience, it's kind of a frustrating thing, because I would argue that I've made um, I've had a lot of life experience that not a lot of adults have had. And like you said, with more experience doesn't necessarily mean more wisdom. There are people who can make the same decision over and over and over again, whether they're aware of it or not. And we're very habitual people. And I know you talked a lot about that. And in terms of like how this mentality is embedded in our society for kids, like I said, it's not just this, like the reading talked a lot about. I want to make sure I say this, like, then there's the child plotting on clumsiness with his school book, doll and ball. He senses that something important and mighty is taking place without his participation. Something that spells out fortune and misfortune, something that punishes and rewards. And to me, I think that was like, I hate the word trigger because I think it's like, that triggered me. But like, I think for me, that was like my hot button, and that's kind of what did it for me. And afterwards, I actually talked to my husband for a really long time. We had a really good conversation. But I know that in my own life, there have been not just good decisions that have been made on my behalf, but really bad ones. And when I was really young, my dad walked out of my life. And I've only met him one time. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to get all emotional, but I think you would want to see that, these are real conversations for people. And it's not just about like physical rights, but it's also about mental rights, and just having consideration and care and awareness for the decisions that we make as adults and how they affect our kids. And, my dad decided on my behalf as a child when I was little that I was better off without him, and that him going away and being absent in my life was actually what was best for me. And in a lot of ways, as an adult, um, I agree with that to an extent. My dad was an adulterer. He was very abusive physically and emotionally towards my mom. And, my dad was dishonorably discharged from the military, from the Marines, and beat his wife and cheated on my mom. And he had another girl pregnant while he was married to my mom. So I have a sister who's a few months younger than me from a different mom, which is a little awkward. But I've only met them the one time, and I think one of the biggest regrets in my life is not holding my dad accountable to that when I had the opportunity to. And my dad deciding that that's what was best for me was not a right that I felt like, or was not a choice I felt he had the right to make on my behalf. And I feel that as a child, if you're choosing to walk out of my life or be in my life, I feel like that should be me having a relationship with you, should be my decision to make. I have my own experiences, my own feelings, my own understanding, my own knowledge. And in the way that those things affect me as a child, and this is what I was telling my husband, earlier when we were talking about this, our parents in the 90s, I was born in 92, but I'm 29. But, when we were growing up, our parents made decisions for us. And my mom made decisions for me when it came to handling my dad. And I was never put in therapy. It was never talked about, which, is why I apologize. That's why it's so hard to talk about as an adult, because when Tommy and I were growing up, the things that had happened to us, it was like, well, I'm your parent. I know what's best for you. And that's just it. And you'll understand when you're older, and you'll understand as an adult. And I feel that, when it comes to kids, and their mental health, and I'm a huge mental health advocate, especially for children, because I've obviously been a kid, but I love that the reading talked about how something mighty is happening without their participation. And to feel like I never was able to be part of that conversation is something that really affects me as an adult. And, I talked to my mom recently, and it's taken me 30 years. Obviously, I don't have a great relationship with my mom, but I talked to her a couple months ago. I'm sorry, I'm like crying so much. I swear I talk about this more than just right now. I actually talk about it all the time, which is good. But, my mom said, well, you were always such a private person. And I have a sister who is very mentally ill and who needed a lot of care and mental advocacy when she was a kid. And so that was something that was really given the attention and the focus in my family. And my mom even recently told me, she said, but I never knew that it bothered you that much, that you didn't see your dad, or that we didn't talk about your dad. I just thought that you wouldn't want to talk about it. And I think my mom was doing it in a way to protect me. But, as a child, to never have anyone ask you or say, hey, let's talk about what happened, or how does that make you feel? And I think I told my mom recently, like, that was the kicker for me as an adult, now having to deal with this at age 30. I said, I just wish you would have put me in therapy. I just wish somebody would have said, hey, are you okay with this decision? I know that this happened to you, but let's talk about it. And I feel like a lot of adults just make a decision on a child's behalf, and it's not always malicious or with bad intent, but I think my mom thought, like, oh, you'll understand when you're older. You'll understand when you have kids why I kept you away, or why he stayed away. And, I told my husband, because we've been talking a lot about me going to therapy, and I've been to therapy before, but I feel like I should probably go back for a lot of these reasons. But I love what the text said, something that spells out fortune and misfortune. And I feel like a lot of times parents will talk to their kids about good things that are happening in sports and all these things, but we don't talk about, some of the misfortune that's happened. And there's a lot of decisions that get made for children. And when we were growing up, like I was hit with a belt if I didn't obey my mom or my dad. And usually my mom, because my mom was a stay-at-home mom. So when my dad came home, if I got in trouble that day, I was getting hit with a belt. And so there's just a lot of decisions in my life. And I think the thing that's frustrating is like parents say like, oh, you're just a kid. Oh, you'll understand when you're older. Oh, when you're a parent, you'll understand why I did what I did or why you can't do those things. And to me, it's like, but I'm only a kid for a certain part of my time here on this earth. And I don't know how long that's going to be. It could be very long, it could be very short. But kids are only kids for a small portion of their life, and they're adults for almost their entire life, And I think that a lot of parents don't understand that the decisions that they make on their behalf, even though they may be doing it to protect the kid at that point there and then, they have ramifications in the future. And so I think that there's a level of accountability. And I know, again, this lecture wasn't about the mental advocacy of children, but I think just advocating for children in general is the point. And I really do believe that everything is connected. And if we're not protecting children in terms of their rights in that way, how could we be protecting their emotional rights and their mental rights, their mental well-being, their happiness, them being free and being people? And to say that like me at that age, that I wasn't fully capable of understanding, comprehending, and reflecting on what happened to me, and to take that experience and be able to say, hey, I do want to see my dad, or hey, I don't want to see my dad. That decision should have been left up to me. And that was something that was taken from me that now as an adult, I will never get back. So anyway, I apologize. I told you it was going to get a little emotional for me, but I think that it's good that, we're having these conversations, and it's nice to see that our generation is wanting to change that and is wanting to protect kids and say, you know what, it's so interesting to me because me and Tommy are Christians. And I said, it's really sad because the Bible says, let no one despise you of your youth in 1 Timothy 4:12. But yet we go ahead and take the reins and tell a child what they need to do and make kids feel that they're little, inferior, they're not good enough, they're not as smart as an adult. Like, oh, I'm a kid right now, so I don't understand. So to me, it's really hypocritical that we live in a society that's based on Christian principles, yet the Bible says, let no one despise you of your youth, yet we're despising people who are young and little. It's really interesting. There's just one more thing I wanted to add because I forgot about it. But I highlighted, sorry, I'm like really stuffed up now. Our perceptions of children, size, I'm taller than you, comparison culture where bigger is better. It's inconvenient and unpleasant to be little. Then I underlined weak. Adults are an enemy that they have to surrender to. They're forced to submit and obey. We never ask for opinion or consent. And so those were just kind of like my closing thoughts. And so I think these conversations are awesome. I don't think that the conversation should stop. I think that a lot more people, my age, your age, of all ages really, need to start advocating for kids in a lot of other ways. Not just in their physical rights, but also in terms of their mental liberation and their emotional liberation, and valuing them as valuable, or seeing them as valuable members, not just of society, but as the human race, and to not discount them as like, oh, you're just like a half. I kind of thought of like 2.5 men, and I'm like, that's actually kind of a really shitty thing to say. Like, just because he's little doesn't mean he's a half, like a half a person. So it's just really interesting. But those were just kind of my thoughts on it, and I'm looking forward to hearing your feedback. There's a lot more that I could say about it, but I don't want to have therapy over Zoom by myself. And I'm sure you don't want to hear that either, but I think they're good conversations to have. And it definitely has opened up some things in my life that I want to continue advocating for, and really participate in to, help other kids who are like me, or who feel helpless, or who feel like they don't have control of their life, and really they don't, and decisions are made for them by people who are bigger than them and older than them, and don't really value their thoughts and feelings. And I think a lot of parents are trying to change that. So hopefully the conversation continues, and I'm just going to continue to advocate, the best way that I know how. So I'll see you next week. Thanks for joining me for therapy. Bye.